Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Appraisal 2022 briefing for ELFT. As I've just said, this is not going to be an in-depth appraisal training, but really just to give you an overview and of the new changes to appraisal, and also give you and signpost you to where you can find more information. My name is Princess Kaba. I'm the Head of People Development for the Trust, and I will be taking you through the session. As I've said, because we are recording this session, please can you hold your questions at the end. If you are going to forget your questions, then please do pop it in the chat, and then what we can do is go through them, go through the questions at the end. I'm supported today by my wonderful colleagues, Cassandra Steele, who is the Learning Development Advisor for Elective Learning, Christopher Tyson, who is the Functional Skills Coordinator, and also Ola, who is our Learning and Development Officer. Strength in numbers, right? So those are my great support system today. So if you've got any issues with IT, please do drop it in the chat as well, and the team will work to make sure that we can sort that out. Next slide, please. Amazing, thank you. So it would be amazing to find out who you are and where we can find you in the trust, and also so we can update a register to say that you have attended. So if you could please do me a favor and pop your name, your full name and your email address in the chat, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Annette. Trigger fingers. Brilliant. So keep them coming for us, please. Thank you, Francis. Brilliant. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we here for today, and what will you know after this session? So by the end of this briefing, you will know the changes to the 2022 appraisal process. You'll be able to identify the key aspects of the ELFT appraisal process, and you will also know how and where to get more information from. Okay. Don't worry about taking notes for these. The slides will be sent to you after. Okay, so let's start off with what's new for 2022. So the appraisal cycle for this year started in July. So we started on the 19th of July. That's when the appraisal was launched, officially launched. And we have a deadline date of the 31st of October. So we are keeping that deadline date of the 31st of October, but we will be reviewing it and just taking a look at where we are in terms of returns for the trust. And if we feel that we need to request an extension from the executives, then we will approach them and request an extension. But at the moment, we are firmly standing on the 31st of October as a deadline date for the appraisal completion. This year in 2022, appraisal will now be on our ELFT Learning Academy system, which is our new learning management system called ELA, ELFT Learning Academy. So you'll be able to do your appraisals online. I think that would be music to some people's ears because we've had to go from online to paper, and now we're going back online, but this process is so much easier. So for this year and going forward, you'll be doing your appraisals on the ELA system, the ELFT Learning Academy. Okay, some really cool features on ELA. So you have the ability to choose the staff that you manage and appraise. So usually in some instances with the online appraisal, managers could just appraise their staff, but with ELA, you have the ability to choose the staff that you manage and therefore choose the staff that you are going to appraise. So to make sure that you're appraising the right people. You also have the ability and the function on ELA to delegate appraisal to another manager or somebody who is most appropriate, okay? And again, one of the things that we usually get in terms of feedback, people have said to us, actually, you know, I manage 30 staff. It's impossible for me to conduct all 30 of the appraisals, especially given the deadline date. So what the system allows you to do is the system allows you to delegate your appraisals or delegate appraisees to other senior members in the team or somebody who's more appropriate for them to undertake the appraisal. So those are really cool features to the system. Because it is being online, there's no need for you to complete other information such as names, professional registrations, etc. simply because the system will have all those information. So we don't want people to duplicate, and we want you to focus on having a really quality conversation. So you don't need to put those information in the system. You might be pleased to hear that we've removed the performance rating. So we're no longer asking people to rate in terms of exceed expectations, meets expectations, improvement required, on unsatisfactory. So those performance ratings have been removed. But really what we're asking people is to focus on having a quality conversation with your appraisees, a quality conversation with your managers, really looking at your contribution to your role, your contribution to the trust over the year, and how you plan to communicate going forward. As always, we've made sure that we have enough support materials, and we continue to build on these support materials for staff to access. So we've got the guidance on the process on the intranet. It's also on Ella. And we also have an FAQ, frequent answer, question and answer, relating to appraisal, and we will be building on more resources as well, all of which you can find on the Ella system, so the ELFT Learning Academy, and you can also find it on the intranet. What the ELFT Learning Academy will start doing is every month or every other month, it will send emails to people, just reminding them of the fact of their responsibility to have their appraisal and also to undertake an appraisal. So if you've not completed an appraisal, the system will automatically send an email out reminding you that you have not completed the appraisal. Next slide, please. Okay, most of the time when we talk about appraisal, a lot of people say, actually, one of the biggest barriers of doing appraisal is time. So we've just given a rough timeline just to help people. And in terms of our timeline, what we're saying is, in terms of ongoing, so this should be cyclical approach to appraisal, we should be having regular monthly supervision. So supervisions, one-to-one, however you call them, that should be regular and happening on a monthly basis. And if we can have that and tie that into the appraisal, it will make the appraisal a lot easier, and we'll be also making sure that you're keeping on top of what's happening in terms of objectives and PDPs and etc. So really at the top, ongoing monthly supervision should be key and the foundation to having a successful appraisal. And then what we're saying is, between July to October, we're expecting that managers and staff, so both parties, to agree appraisal meeting dates. We usually say give 10 working days notice, because when we look at appraisal and we look at the whole process of appraisal, it's one of reflection and it's one of giving feedback. So we really want people to be able to reflect and think about, actually, what have I done last year and what would I be doing next year, and how would that contribute to the trust? How would that be contributing to my team? How would I be contributing to meeting the trust strategy? So we asked that July to October, both parties agree the appraisal meeting, giving 10 working days notice. Okay. We also asked that both parties prepare for the appraisal meeting using the conversation framework. So preparation for the appraisal is key. Okay, so you really need to prepare for your appraisal before you have the meeting. And this year, what we are calling, we're not calling it an appraisal form, it's a conversation framework, because we really want people to really focus on having a quality conversation using the details in the conversation framework as a guide. Okay. The appraisal meetings are held and the conversation framework agreed and signed by the 31st of October, which is the absolute deadline date. Between October and November, we're expecting our people and culture business partners to undertake directorate appraisal audits. So the audits will be looking at where appraisal done, where they confirmed, and where objectives set. Okay, so our people and culture business partners will be doing that, and it will be 10% of appraisals in each directorate that they will be auditing. Any issues that come up from the audit, our people and culture business partner will raise that in the directorate management team meeting on a local level, and it will be discussed there. Next slide, please. Okay. So now going into appraisal best practice, as a reminder, appraisal applies to all ELFT employees, excluding those who are on medical and dental terms and conditions, because our medical and dental staff are subjected to a different appraisal system, so therefore they are excluded from this appraisal. Also, when we talk about applies to all ELFT employees, we are speaking about people who are on substantive or permanent basis with us, people who are on fixed term contract, and apprentices also. In line with when we talk about those who are excluded from appraisal, we do say honorary staff are excluded from our appraisal because they are employed by another organization. However, you may wish to use the appraisal conversation framework to set objectives if staff are doing work directly for us. Bank staff are again excluded from the appraisal. So when we do a return in terms of looking at who's completed an appraisal, we exclude bank staff just simply because of the nature of their role. Again, there are flexibility. If you do have a bank staff who have been working with you for a month and you know that that's going to continue, you may wish to use the conversation framework to set that bank staff some objectives. Agency staff are exempt from the appraisal. Simply again because they're agency, but again you might want to have a conversation with them and set agency staff some objectives. The FAQ that we have online sets out a little bit more in details on who is exempt from the appraisal also. The principles of appraisal is that it needs to be fair, open and equal to all, so everybody have a right to have a fair and open appraisal. Appraisal needs to be evidence-based, so all those emails, those wonderful emails that you've been getting thanking you, or from either service users, other colleagues, or indeed stakeholders, please do take those into your appraisals as evidence. Fundamental rule of appraisal is no surprise. Basically, what this means is that if you have not raised it previously in a conversation, in your one-to-one, in your supervisions, you cannot then use the appraisal forum to raise any issues and or concern. Okay. The appraisal is a two-way process. It's not a one-way process. As a manager, you're expected to contribute and take part and feed in and give feedback. As staff, we're also expected to engage, contribute, feedback also. So it's a two-way process in terms of the appraisal. Okay. And I like the bit in bold at the bottom that says it's part of an ongoing relationship, not a once-a-year event. So if I take you back to looking at our timeline, remember at the top of the timeline, it says it's an ongoing conversation. So please make sure as part of your monthly supervision, you bring up and you discuss anything set in the objective also to make it as part of that ongoing relationship and not a once-a-year event. Next slide, please. Okay, so in summary, we're saying absolutely fundamental rule to appraisal. Again, no surprise. So if you haven't raised it, you cannot wait till the appraisal and you cannot bring it up at the appraisal meeting. Two-way process, both parties are expected to engage, expected to contribute, expected to feedback in the process. It is an opportunity to meet with your manager and reflect on your contribution. So what have I contributed to my role? What have I contributed to the trust in the last year? How do I plan to contribute going forward? And what support do I need? You are reflecting on previous year's contribution, as I've just said. You're looking forward and agreeing objectives for the upcoming year. And it's also space to discuss and identify any learning needs and any career aspiration. So again, as part of the conversation framework, discuss any of your personal development plans with your manager, think about your career aspirations, thinking about the support that you would need from the trust and the support that you need from your manager to have those conversations. Next slide, please. Okay, so most of the time people say, how do we prepare for an appraisal? Please, if you don't take away anything from today, please take away the fact that it's really crucial that you prepare for your appraisal, okay? Ways that we advise that you can prepare is look at the conversation framework on our ELFT Learning Academy, just because it is new, so please have a chance to look at it. I expect everybody to rush back after this session and jump on Ella and go through and look at the conversation framework on the system. So please look at that, familiarize yourself with that, familiarize yourself with a different section, and also have a skim through or a read through of the guidance notes as well. Okay. Another way to prepare is to reflect on your supervision or your one-to-one objectives. So any comments, any any things that you've highlighted, any objectives that you've had in your supervision, any previous year's objectives, look at those notes. Think about how you've met those previous year's objectives. If you haven't met them, have a note and jot down why you haven't met them, so that when you go into your appraisal meeting with your manager, with your staff, you can have that discussion. Okay. Gather any data or evidence that you might need. Again, I've just said any of those wonderful emails that you've received from stakeholders, from colleagues, from service users, please gather them up and take them into your objectives, ready for a conversation. Prepare possible objectives for the upcoming year. One of the things that we hear a lot from our staff, and also the staff survey tells us, is that setting objectives in appraisal is really difficult. So we will always advocate that when you go into your appraisal, before your appraisal meeting, have a go at writing down your objectives. Have a go at thinking about what objectives, what do you need to achieve, what's the direction of the department, of your directorate, of your team in the coming year, and have a go at writing down those objectives, so that when you have your appraisal meeting, you can have a conversation with your manager, you can have a conversation with your staff and agree on the objectives. Okay. And also think about any learning needs that you want to do. Really think about, anything other than formal learning. So thinking about, opportunities for shadowing, thinking about opportunities for secondment, thinking about opportunities for apprenticeship. So really thinking about other learning needs. And of course, if you do identify any formal learning needs that you need, then really thinking about those. I will always say that when you're thinking about your learning needs and you're going into your objective, please make sure you've done some research. So if you are wanting to take up a course, make sure that you've thought about actually what's the cost, what's the duration, and how might that impact your current role, so that when you go into your appraisal meeting, you're having a conversation with your manager and you're having those conversations and you're managing the expectations. Also thinking about your learning is, do think about your statutory and mandatory training. Are you up to date with your statutory and mandatory training? If not, and what can be done about it, and any blockages or barriers stopping you from achieving your statutory and mandatory training. Next slide, please. Okay, so in summary, for preparation, prepare well for your appraisal. Take some time out to think about it, note it down if you need to, so that when you go into your appraisal meeting, you can refer back to it. Schedule a time that works for both your appraisee and your appraiser. So making sure, remember we're saying give 10 working days notice. So by giving the 10 working days notice, you would hopefully have be able to find a suitable time that works for both. Consider people's commitments, so each other's commitments. Many of us are working from home at the moment. A lot of us are in the office 1 day a week. So thinking about commitments, especially for those who are working from home, kids are currently on summer holidays. We might have other caring responsibilities. So really thinking about commitments and having a conversation during that 10 working days notice to have an agreement on how you can move forward in a suitable time. Agree a time that you will not be interrupted if possible, and schedule more than one session if that works best. Usually, I think there's a notion that people think if you're having your appraisal, you've got to do it all in one day, in one sitting, in that one time. But you can schedule more than one meeting if that works best, but it has to be in discussion with both parties, the appraiser and the appraisee. Next slide, please. Also, when we are preparing and part of looking at how we're going to have an appraisal meeting, we do need to think about our location. So thinking about whether it's going to be face-to-face or a virtual appraisal meeting. If it is going to be a face-to-face meeting, think about the room that you're using. Make sure that you're booking a room that's light and airy. We are still in the times of COVID, and we do need to make sure that people are safe. So please do make sure that you book a space that is light and airy. Consider social distancing if you want to, if you must. And again, think about and have that discussion around mask wearing. Some people feel comfortable wearing masks. Some people are quite happy not to wear a mask. So have all those kind of conversations if you're going to have a face-to-face meeting. Okay. If you are going to have a virtual appraisal meeting, consider the platform that you want to use and make sure that it works best for both parties. Some people prefer Teams, some people prefer Zoom. Have a conversation and have a mutual agreement on which platform is best. And think about the environment that you are both working in, making sure that you are free from interruption or limited interruption as possible. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the questions, I appreciate this slide is very busy, and of course you have a chance to read through it in depth when the slides are sent to you. But one of the things that we get asked is actually, what is the process? Who does what? So again, this is just a quick process in terms of what happens. So the manager or the appraiser and the staff agree a date for the appraisal conversation. The staff is to prepare for the appraisal by completing the conversation framework. So we do expect staff to go into Ella, complete the conversation framework as fully as they can, and then submit that conversation framework to their manager. And we are saying that at least submit it 3 days before your appraisal meeting, just so that that gives your manager some scope and some time to also prepare for their conversation and add any contribution that they wish. The manager can also review the conversation framework, review the comments and the inclusion made by the appraisee, the staff member, and they could also add comments as well. After that, the manager and the staff will meet and they will have an appraisal meeting, and they will use the conversation framework as a guide to have a quality conversation. If there are any changes during the appraisal meeting, then the staff should update the conversation framework and then approve the content of the discussion. And then that would then go over to the manager, and the manager can have a look at that and also approve the content of the discussion. And after both the manager and the staff have approved the contents of the discussion, both parties would sign off the appraisal as a completed appraisal, and also submit that. Once the appraisal conversation framework is submitted, no changes can be made to it. However, if it's saved as draft, you can continue to go into it and make any changes. But once it's submitted, you cannot make any changes to it. However, what you will be able to do once you've submitted your conversation framework, you'll be able to print it off as a PDF and save it in your local files also. Next slide, please. At this point, I must say, we will show you the conversation framework at the end of this session, so you're not working blind, so don't worry. The conversation framework this year asks 4 simple questions because we really want you to concentrate on having a quality conversation. So the 4 questions that are asked in the conversation framework is, how did last year go? What were your highlights? What were your lowlights? You know, what could you have done better? What did you enjoy doing? Those kind of things. So really reflecting back on your contributions, thinking about how did last year go? Then looking forward and think about, okay, let's think about next year. Let's think about, where do I want the service to go? Let's think about where is the team going? What's the direction of travel? What are the objectives that I need to set for next year? So really thinking ahead and thinking about service commitments and service delivery for the coming year. Then from that, you're thinking about, what are the personal and professional development that I might need? So again, because you're thinking about your objectives for next year, your objectives might born a personal development plan. So really thinking about your personal development plan, really thinking about, you know, your professional development for next year, and having a conversation with your manager or your staff about what that would look like. And then the final section in it, in terms of, how can I support you? So managers really asking staff members, how can I support you? What else do you need from me as a manager to enable you to do your role more effectively? Okay, and at this point, staff are encouraged to give upward feedback to their managers. So what would you like your manager to continue doing? What would you like your manager to do differently? What would you like your manager to start doing? So really thinking about that upward feedback to your manager in line with their leadership style, and then really also thinking about, what else as a manager, or what else do I need from my manager to support me to do my role? And that includes things like, actually, we're not having monthly supervision, and I'd like for us to start having monthly supervision, so that, you know, I can keep on top of my targets. So those are the 4 question areas. How did last year go? Thinking about next year, personal and professional development plan, and then how can I support you? Next slide, please. When we talk about feedback, because feedback is a massive part of our appraisal, we are introducing this tool for giving feedback, so giving and receiving feedback, and it's called the SICK module. And the SICK stands for specific. So when you're giving feedback, make sure that it's specific. Make sure that you're stating the impacts, yeah, and make sure that you also state the change and or the continuation that you would like to see. So the specific are the actions, the events, the behavior that you might like somebody to change. The impact is, you know, what are the specific, what does that result in? What are the impact of that behavior? What has that resulted in for the service? What has that resulted in for the service users, etc. And also the continuation or the change is what improvement or what reinforcement you would like to see. So what would you like to happen next time? And again, we've just given a simple example is when you did X specific, when you made a change to how service users are invited specific, it made us feel X. So it made us as a team more responsive to service users. It made us as a team, you know, more, it made us as a team to feel more in control of the appointments, and therefore we can then let the managers or the consultants know who's coming, and it then made sure that as a team we could offer more appointments to service users. In the future, I would ask that you continue to make improvements and looking at how, you know, service is being delivered. So again, just how that would be specific, impact, continuation, and or change. Again, this is just a guide. It's a tool for you to use. You don't have to use it if you currently have a model, or if you currently have a way that feedback is being done and it's being delivered accurately, but it's a tool for people to use in terms of how do you give feedback during your appraisal meeting. Make sure that the feedback is specific, make sure that you're stating the impact, and make sure that you're also stating the change and or the continuation that you would like to see as a result of your feedback. Next slide, please. Okay, so is it true in terms of busting the myths? Upward feedback in the appraisal is not compulsory, but it is highly recommended. We have had comments where people have said, I'm not sure how I could give this feedback to my manager with no repercussions. And what we're saying is that it's not compulsory, it's not mandatory that you give the feedback. However, the feedback is encouraged because it would help to build and maintain that management relationship. So that's why it's highly recommended. There is currently no link between pay progression and appraisal. So if everybody will still get a pay increase if you're due for a pay increase in line with the government initiative, but there is no link between pay progression and your appraisal. An appraisal is required for all eligible staff members. So if you are currently at work and you're not off sick, long-term sick, you're not on maternity leave, you're not on external secondment, if you are at work, you should be having an appraisal meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to pause and just take any questions before I invite my colleague Cassie to take you through the conversation framework.
Hi everyone, this is just a really short video today just to show you a little bit about the appraisal process, where you can find it and where you can access all information you need to carry out the appraisal process. So you'll see on my screen, I'm on the home page of the ELF Learning Academy, and this is where you will find your appraisal tile or your appraisal dashboard. If I scroll down the home page, I will see a pink tile called My Appraisal, and that is where I'm going to find everything appraisal related that I need to complete the process. So if I click on My Appraisal, it takes me into the appraisal homepage. So now that I'm in the appraisal homepage, you will see there's lots of information and a few different sections with different types of guidance documents for you. So I'm just going to show you very quickly where you can find different parts. Down the left-hand side of my homepage, you'll see that there's a little box that says appraisal briefings. That is where you can find links to appraisal briefing events that you can book on to attend. You can do that by clicking straight into the link here that says appraisal briefing. There's some information on what the appraisal briefing entails on that page there. If I continue scrolling down, I will see training for appraisees. So this is appraisal skills for staff. So we are in the process of delivering training for our staff as well as for our managers. And if you are interested in attending appraisal training as a staff member, you can click here for details. So that if you click on that link there, it takes you directly to the events available and you can book a space. Similarly, if you're a manager or if you will be conducting appraisals as an appraiser, then you might want to attend the training for appraisers or the training for managers training. And that is this second box here. Again, there's a direct link that will take you to all available events that you can book onto and attend. There's information on each of those pages about how long the training is. And please do feel free to sign up as we still have some spaces available. If you continue scrolling down, there's just some information about another training course that we continue to offer here at ELFT, which is having that conversation. It's a very useful elective course that we've got around holding potentially uncomfortable or difficult conversations. And that is something that you can book onto, especially if you're a manager. It's nice for your preparation into conducting your appraisals. So again, there's a direct link there that will take you straight into those training events. Then what you will see, if I scroll back up and I take you now down through the middle part of the page, the first thing you'll see here is a video. That is a video to the appraisal launch webinar that we had back in July when we launched Appraisal. If you missed that, there is a recording there that you can listen or watch, and you'll get all the updates on how the Appraisal 2022 process works. If I continue to scroll down, I will see two more boxes, one of them that says My Appraisal and one of them that says My Team Appraisal. So you'll see that I have signed into ELFT Learning Academy as a manager. So I've got just a demo account here called Test Manager. And that is why I have two boxes, because I've got my appraisal. As a manager, I will still have an appraisal. And that is what this box here is showing me, that I have access to my appraisal framework. And then I've got all of my team's appraisals here as well. So everybody that I will be having an appraisal with or conducting their appraisal, they will also show up in my team appraisal. However, it might be that when you come to this page, you don't see everybody who directly reports into you. They might not all show up on your page. That's absolutely fine. You have the ability to choose your team. If I scroll back up and I now show you down the right-hand side, that is where you can find everything you need in relation to picking your team members. So again, if in my team box, not everybody I know I manage or will be having an appraisal with has showed up, then I can select and choose them as being part of my team. We have a short video on how to do this, so I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but I just want to show you how easy it is to access. It's just this box here, update team members. I select choose team member, and that is where I can search for certain individuals who may not be in my list, but I know as part of my team. So let's say, for instance, that I wanted to search for Princess Kaba, and I wanted to say she's part of my team. Then I would simply type in Princess, press enter, and if I scroll down, I'll see everybody with the name Princess here, and I would go to the relevant princess who I am speaking about and select person you manage. Once I select person I manage, and I go back into my homepage, they would appear in the My Team appraisal. So if you, as again, just a reminder, if you don't see everybody here that you manage, it's absolutely fine. You can add them yourself. Just directly opposite the My Team appraisal box, you'll see how to select your team and delegate an appraiser. That is where you would click to see a short video on how to do that. But just to finish off around how to update team members or how to allocate appraisers, Just below the update team members box, there's the delegate appraiser box, which is where you can go in and you can select another manager to conduct somebody's appraisal. So for instance, if I had 15 people who I line manage and I'm not able to conduct all 15 appraisals, it might be there might be somebody more appropriate to do their appraisal. I can delegate the appraisal to them. So I simply click in. Let's say, just for purposes of demonstration, I want test user 1 to be doing the appraisal for me. If I click on that, I can then select choose appraiser, and that person will be allocated to the individual who I line manage. So again, if you're not quite sure how all of that worked, just simply go back into the short video here that will talk to you all about how to select your team and delegate an appraiser. Beneath that video, there's just some useful information. So some useful appraisal information. You've got the appraisal guidance and you've got the appraisal FAQs, and those are direct links there. That will tell you all you need to know about who's in scope for appraisals, how you can complete them, and all different kinds of questions you may have. Most of them will hopefully be answered in there. So now what I'm going to show you is how the conversation framework looks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you in to the framework as an appraisee. So taking my manager hat off now, I'm going into the framework thinking about it from the perspective of me having an appraisal. So if I go and I see my appraisal here, you'll see the workflow name is appraisal. The status is currently incomplete because I have yet to complete it, but I can click on view as appraisee and it will take me straight into the welcome page. So there's just a welcome to your appraisal page, which gives a little information on why we do appraisals, deadlines, and things like that. If I scroll to the bottom, I see the next button, I click on next, and that takes me into the next section, which is all about how did last year go. And what you'll see on this page, and you'll see on every page or every section of the framework, there's always some guidance and prompts to help you when it comes to filling in your appraisal. So as you'll see here, it says, please use the space below to note your overall reflections on your contributions to the trust in 2021-2022. And then there's some bullet points there to support. So you can go in, you can type your answer in. You'll see here, I've already obviously practiced on this, but it's an open text box that can keep going. So you can put as many reflections in as you'd like. I scroll down, there's a section on my last year's objectives. So again, maybe you weren't in ELFT, you didn't have objectives set last year, that's fine. What we just suggest you do is just put NA in these sections or leave them blank. However, if you did have objectives set last year, then this is the space where you can add objectives. So you can see here, there's an add objective button. I can click on add objective, state what the objective was in the box, state the status of it. Was it completed? Is it in progress? Was it not started? And any additional comments that I'd like to make about it. I would press save, and then all of that would be captured in the framework. If I continue to scroll down, I can then get into a section about trust values. So we've got an image with a reminder of what our trust values are. There's some questions around the values you believe you embody the most at work, commenting on why you think it's a strength of area for you, areas you'd like to develop in more. And then when you get to the bottom, you can either save progress, so you can save your progress and come back to it at a later date, or if you're ready to continue, you can select next and it will take you into the next section. Whilst I'm showing you how to do that, what I'd like to also let you know is you don't always have to scroll to the bottom of the page and select next. Down the left-hand side, you'll see a list here of all sections, and you can simply click into the sections if you want to go to a different one rather than scrolling down every time. So for instance, if I wanted to go back to my welcome page, I could click on welcome to your appraisal and I'm back here. If I wanted to jump back into the third section, I could simply click on let's think about next year and it takes me into the third section. So we then get into thinking about the year ahead. There's a box again for you to make some open reflections on what you'd like to work on for the year ahead. There's some prompts here to help you reflect on those things. And then you will have objectives you'd like to set for the year. So again, clicking add objective, typing your answer in, and selecting which strategy outcome your objective aligns to. Scrolling down to the bottom, I select next, and I get into my personal and professional development section. Again, add in, follow the guidance as you move through. It's quite easy to navigate. There's lots of prompts to help you and lots of space to capture your thoughts. It then takes me into the how can I support you section. So this is thinking about how your manager can support you. So we've kept in upward feedback, which we had in the 2021 appraisal. So it's a moment for you to take to give your manager some feedback. So you can fill those in, select next, and it takes you into the appraisal sign-off page. So this is where you've reached the end of your appraisal, and both you as the appraisee and your manager will need to confirm that you're happy with the account. So both confirm that you're happy with what's been captured. Then you select submit, and it will be a complete status. A reminder that if you still want to go back in and play around with it, and then you're not quite sure that you have done everything in there that you needed to do, or you've not captured everything in there that you need to, save as draft and you can go back into it at any time. Okay, so finally, I just want to show you really quickly how it would look to go into someone else's appraisal if you are the manager. So let's say that my colleague, test user 1, has gone in and has completed their appraisal framework to the best of their ability. They've told me that they're ready for me to take a look at it. Then I can go and I can view as manager, and what you'll see is the boxes are all locked, which means that whatever the appraisee has put into their reflections boxes and into their objective sections, I can read it, but I can't edit what they've said. However, what I can do is at the bottom of every single page, there is now a new box that you will not have seen if you were the appraisee. There's a box to capture your comments on that section. So each section has an open text box for you as the manager to make any comments that you think need to be added to around that section. So for instance, I'll press next and I'll show you, let's think about next year. Again, I can see what test user 1 will have said about thinking about the upcoming year. And then if there's things I'd like to add to discuss with that staff member, I can type in my open reflections box here. Again, saving progress and coming back to it at any stage. And just as I mentioned, there's still the option here for me as the manager. I have to confirm it's an accurate account of my appraisal conversation before it can be submitted. So again, both parties have to sign off and submit. A reminder that once you submit, no changes can be made. So if you still want to go back and make any edits, save as draft and come back to it at a later date. And that is it for your appraisal demonstration.